Hello, 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 and welcome to our Pigments and Petals Floral Challenge. It's going to be a 5-day challenge. We're going to do 5 different projects, each day a new project, but I'm hoping that the knowledge that you get from each project you can carry over into the next project. The first today, we are just going to work on color mixing. We are going to work on composition, just simple compositions. We're going to practice some flowers, loose florals, and then we're just going to do our own little practice composition. And then I also have some homework sheets, some project sheets for you over on Patreon. This is for both my Patreons that pay and my free Patreons. So it's open to everybody as long as you're a member of my Patreon. It doesn't matter. I'm going to leave it open for 5 days after it ends on the 24th. So 5 more days after that, it'll still be up because I know a lot of people will have to catch up. So I'm giving you time to catch up. Once that 5 days is over, then I am going to move it over into the dabblers and just put it into the archives. So that's what's going to happen. If you have any questions, just ask in the chat. I'm in the chat trying to help anybody that's here live and they need a little bit of extra help or they just have questions. I'm here in the chat, so feel free to ask anything you need to. So let's just go to the studio and get started. All right, so what we're gonna need is some watercolors. I don't care what colors that you have. I'm just gonna show you the colors that I've mixed up. I've just been messing with this palette. And this is just a curated palette. I have Winsor Newton, I have M. Graham, I have Daniel Smith all in here, so it's not one name brand that we have. You might need a little bit of white gouache. So I've got some white gouache here just in case we need it. I am going to use my silver black velvet 3000S, a number 8 for this. You'll need some paper towels. You will need some watercolor paper. You will also need a sketchbook first. Alright, so this is how I started off. The first thing you want to do is decide on your composition. You can look at your, I'm going to turn it over to this page. You can look at the downloads that I provided for you in Patreon, and you can do different styles of composition. You can do an L, you can do the L the other way, you can do an arch, you can do an S, you can do a square, you can do an oval, you can do a circle, and there's others that you can do. And what you would do once you decide what style you want to do, and for us, I think we're going to do an oval. You would just draw your guide out before, not necessarily on the paper that you're going to paint on. You can though. Just draw your guide out. I've got my oval here, so I want a large flower here, another one here, then maybe some medium flowers here, and then maybe some smaller flowers here, and you want to sort of balance them out. And then you can do some I don't know, maybe some sprays if you want, you know, a spray type flower, any kind of leaves that you want. So, you know, you just kind of mark it out. So we know we'll have 2 big ones, then maybe 3 medium ones, and then some smaller ones, maybe some sprays. So you'll just map that out. So these are the different, you can do, there's other types of compositions. These are just the most common ones. For a square, you would just fill up this whole, you know, you would fill up this whole area with flowers, however you wanted them to go. Just draw your guide and then fill up that area. Make sure that you have some large flowers. Those will be your focal point. With this, you might want to start with the large flowers toward the bottom, and then maybe some smaller flowers going down each one of those L's, like that. You just want to decide where you want your flowers, or you could put it up here, put one here, put some little ones here. It's up to you. You just want to map it out. And we're just doing circles. So once you decide what you're going to do, what shape you're going to do, or what kind of composition you want, like I said, you'll decide how many flowers, where you want those in your composition. Then you'll want to work out a color scheme. Now these are just some swatches that I was doing, mixing some different colors, trying to decide what colors I wanted to, you know, to end up with on my painting. Then I started just practicing flowers. And you can see I drew the guide here, and here I was thinking about, do I really want to do an oval? Do I want to do an arch? So I was just kind of doing little tiny sketches, thinking about that, and then working out the colors still. So once you get your composition, and I've decided for this one we're going to do an oval. You get your composition, you get your color palette, whatever colors that you want, and then you practice your flowers. And this is my practice. So I am going to show you a little practice here before we jump into it all. We don't want to just jump into it straight away. Pretty good. And you can do different flowers. Where is my brush? What did I do with my brush? Did I lose it? Oh, I put it over here. Why did I do that? So today the only thing we're going to work in is watercolor, maybe a little bit of gouache. So what I did, I'm just going to take a little bit of my opera pink, which is really bright. I don't want my flowers to be that bright. But what I'm going to do is get a little bit of brown, mix a little bit of brown, and that makes it a little more peachy. I might go in with just a little bit of a darker brown, like a burnt sienna. Just to sort of, ooh, I like that color. So that was a little bit of, what I would do is just do the opera rose or opera pink, and then a little bit of the burnt sienna together. Then I want to go with something a little bit darker. So I am going to jump over here to the alizarin crimson. No, not alizarin crimson, excuse me. This is permanent rose. And I'm going to get a little bit of Naples yellow to make it a little bit more toward the orange color, a little more peachy. Yeah, I like that color. So let's see, I've got some colors going here that I like. And then maybe just sort of a yellow color. With this I like this Naples yellow. Maybe a little bit of Naples yellow. And a little bit of the white gouache, just to make it look a little bit more opaque and a little bit more pastel. Let's see, can you see? Yeah. And then I think I also want a little bit of purple. Let's come in here. I'm going to put the purple in with this brown. This is just a little bit of alizarin crimson with a little bit of brown, and now I'm just adding a bright violet to it. Yeah, so those are the colors I'm going to start off with as far as for the flowers. Now for the greens, I have gotten a little bit of green gold here, and I mixed it with just a little bit of hooker's green. So it's still bright, but it's not too bright. Here I've just got some perylene green, and I've mixed it with a little bit of olive brownish color. And then this one I have a little bit of aqua blue or aqua green, and I've mixed that with the forest green, and that gives it sort of a minty color. So those are my greens that I plan on using. I might want to put just a little bit, make it a little bit darker. And I may come back in here with just a little bit more, with a little bit of maybe sap green. maybe, yeah. And just a little bit more of that brown in with my green. Yeah, I like that. So those are going to be our green colors. We've got those mixed up. And I'll tell you the mixtures in my packet. Just download that. It'll tell you what I mixed to get what. That way you won't be lost. So now we're going to practice. We are going to practice our flowers. Now the first one I want to do, I just want to do like a big open-leafed flower. We are just going to make it up. I'm going to start right here. I want those edges to be a little jiggity-jaggedy. We're going to pretend there's a circle right there in the center, and we are bringing these petals to that center. It's almost like a cosmos, maybe. I might want to put another one just sort of beside of it. And maybe this one, we'll do this bottom petal a little bit elongated because you're looking directly at it. And then we'll just do these petals like so. And you can come in and get some of that Naples yellow. Oh no, let's get some of the burnt umber. And we can just do like little dots in the center. And that's going to be the centers of them. However you want to do it. And you can darken it up. I am going to move my water so that I'm not reaching completely across the camera. And I'm going to pull some of these a little bit closer. Then I want to do a rose. I'll show you how to do a rose. I think I want my rose to be this golden color. So for a rose, I'm just going to start in the center, and I'm just going to do sort of a spiral. I'm leaving a little bit of white of the paper showing through, a little bit of gaps. Just like so. And then you can dip it in the water as you get a little further out, and that just sort of makes the petals lighter, because of course in the center of the rose is going to be a little bit darker. So there you have a rose. I think I'm going to put like a smaller rose right here. Same thing, you just do like a little spiral. You start doing that in the center. Little commas. Leaving some of that white of the paper to shine through. You can dip your brush in water so that these larger petals coming off are just a little bit paler, more watery. Alright, I like that. Now let's go to the, let's see. Let's try a peony. We'll do a peony right here. So we'll just do a petal, and you want it to sort of go down all to the center like a teacup, like it's a little teacup sitting in a saucer. So you want to do 3 petals, leave a little bit of white in between them. You'll come back here, do some little marks to look like layers of petals. And then you'll just add some side petals. And a few petals coming down. You can even add a few more in here. Like that. You can also go in there and put in some yellow centers. Just get some yellow, put it in the center for the stamen. And then I think I'm going to take this purple mixture, and we're just going to do like some little sprays off of this. I'm just doing messy blotches. I don't know if that's, you know, a floral technical term. You got to get the blotches in there. And then I might do one, let's see, do one here. And you want it in a cone shape. So we're just practicing how this might look together. You might want to get this really pale pink, and do some little small flowers with maybe just 4 little petals on them, and do them in a cluster like so. And they don't have to look exactly like flowers. So we'll get some of that. I'm going to balance it off by doing some more little cluster here. You can even do maybe a one here. So that is so far how you could even do a white flower. Just get your white gouache. And this gouache has a little bit of that Naples yellow mixed in with it, so it won't be completely white. If you want white flowers, you can just do that with the gouache. And you can make them have those long, thin, just long, thin petals going around a circle. Like so. And then you want to come back in, start putting in some of your leaves with your greens. So all you're doing is you are just putting the tip down and then just bringing that belly of the brush, the side of the brush down to make those leaf shapes. I'm going to do one here and one here. Maybe do one here. And then you can, to set these lighter flowers off, you might want to go with that really dark green that you've got. You can just do maybe some little tiny little shaggy petals around it, just so that you can see it a little bit better. So we just do little shaggy petals. And that's just a bunch of little tiny brush marks to make them look a little shaggy. Remember, it doesn't have to be perfect. This is a loose floral, so we're not trying to get too fancy with it. We're not trying to get too detailed. We're just relaxing. We're thinking about composition. And we are just thinking about how we want all of this space filled up. So you can come back in here. I'm going to get some of this other green, and I might do like a long, just a long sort of wispy branch. And remember, this is practice. It doesn't have to be perfect. You can even paint over some of your flowers with those leaves if you want to. Let's see, let's get some, I want to get something a little bit more minty, a little lighter. And you can start kind of connecting some of these other flowers. And once the flowers parts have dried, you can come back and add a little bit more just to sort of give them a little more dimension. And come in here in the peony. I'm not liking my peony. We might not do a peony in our composition. And for these little pink flowers, you could just put little dots in there. And then I think for my white flowers, I am going in there with a really dark brown, like really dark brown for the centers. I don't think I'm going to do peonies in ours. I don't like that peony. We're going to have to practice on that more before I like it. So you've got your centers and your white flowers. You could even put a little bit of that sort of creamy color in those white flowers just to give them a little bit more dimension if you want to. It's up to you. I'm just going to add just a touch because they're not actually white, but they are lighter. And then I'm going to pick up some of this purple. We're going to come back and do some darker purples over those sort of sprays. So that's our practice, and that's pretty good. So now let's go to our good watercolor paper. This is 140-pound cold pressed paper, and it is a 6x9. I'm going to start off by just drawing that oval guide and deciding where I want to put my largest flowers first, then my medium flowers, and then kind of sprinkle in the smaller flowers and some leaves in between. I'm mixing up a nice sort of brownie red here. I'm using, not red, brownie pink. I'm using opera pink, and I'm putting in a little bit of burnt sienna into it just to sort of dull it down some and make it look a little bit richer. Then I'm going to my permanent rose, and I am adding just a little bit of the brown to it as well to darken it up. And it turns into sort of like a wine color almost. I've got my Naples yellow, and I mixed that in with a little bit of that other reddish mixture, and now I'm just taking some gouache and mixing it into my Naples yellow, and then a little bit of that bright violet, and then I'm just going to put just a tiny bit of yellow into it, some of the Naples yellow, just to sort of gray it down to, so that none of them will be like super bright. They'll all be a little bit grayed down. And you just do that by using either brown, or you can use the complementary color like I did, the yellow with the purple. Now when you're doing a rose, you want to start off with sort of a spiral in the center, and you want that to be kind of tight little spirals, little commas or C's, and you want to overlap those as you go further out from the rose. I'm dipping my brush into some clean water so that it thins the paint, because in the center of the rose it's going to be darker because the petals are closer together. As the rose blooms, it's going to get a little bit lighter, so I add a little bit of water to my brush just to thin out that paint and make it lighter. I'm going to do a little bit smaller rose here to the side. It's okay if they touch, they can bleed into each other, it's fine. We're not getting ourselves all stressed. Just make sure that you let some of the white of the paper show through in between the petals so that it's not just a big pink blob. It gives that impression of a rose. This is really loose. Now I'm going with an imaginary circle, and around that imaginary circle I'm doing this sort of yellow-orange flower, almost like a Cosmo. Have you ever seen a Cosmo? They have like really frilly edges, and then their petals are like smaller toward the center, and they just sort of fan out. So that's what I'm going for, that type of shape. I'm just going to put a few little buds there beside of it. I'm going to put some down here to mirror those. You want to have a little bit of balance, so the way to do that is to either use the same color, the same shape, or both, and that's what I'm doing here. I'm using similar shapes with the similar color here on the other side of the roses just to give that some balance. And I am just pretending there's a circle on my paper, and I am just painting those petals right around that imaginary circle, which is of course the center. And then I think I'm just going to put a few buds up here, and I'm just doing sort of sloppy ovals. I'm not even taking my time. I'm not even being precious with this. I'm just slapping that paint down. Now I think I'm going to do sort of a spray here, maybe like lavender, or I'm always thinking butterfly bush because that's what I have in my yard. So I've taken that pale purple, and I'm just doing sort of a spray from the top. And then I think to balance it out, I'm going to do one here at the bottom. And I'm just doing just sort of ovals. I'm just touching the brush, the tip of my brush, and sort of pressing down just lightly onto the paper, and that's making those sort of ovally shapes. And then of course I'm just repeating it all the way down, getting a little bit larger toward the bottom so that it's like a cone shape. And now I'm just just sort of tapping my brush. I've got that Naples yellow with a little bit of the gouache mixed together, and I am just doing sort of light, just sort of tapping and doing sort of petal shapes, but nothing distinct. I'm letting a little bit of the white of the paper show through. I'm not getting really fussy with it. It's sort of like a little lacy flower, or either you could say it's a cluster of flowers. And that's what I've done with those. Now I'm going into that red again, and that, not really red, that sort of pinkish burgundy-ish color. And I'm pretending that there is a center, and I'm just doing 4 little petals around that center, and my petals are tiny and round. I'm getting those into like a little cluster. I'm going to balance that out, put some more here. And again, it's just little circles that are arranged around that center. And you can sort of change the shape of the circles to be longer to make it look like you're looking at the side view of the flower. The way that you change the shapes of your flowers can make it look like you're either looking full on or to the side, or maybe 3/4 way at it. Now I'm just going into my greens, and I'm just going to go ahead and do some leaf shapes, start filling in these areas. I've got my little pale green right there going on. And I am putting some leaf shapes, just really messy leaf shapes. All I'm doing is I'm drawing a stem, or just taking my brush, doing a long stem, and then doing sort of pointy ovals as my leaf shapes and attaching it to the stem. Inside those peachy flowers, I'm just putting a really dark brown color and just doing tiny dots for the centers. And then I'm just taking a darker green. I'm going into my sort of lacy flowers and doing some tiny little stems. And it's okay if they bleed. Don't sweat it. You can always paint more, but sometimes it looks really good when it bleeds together. And now I'm going with my really dark green, and I'm doing sort of longer leaves on a longer type of stem. You can do any shape of leaf that you would like. Just use your imagination, experiment with leaf shapes, leaf colors. I'm doing the same thing coming out from these sort of peachy flowers over here. It's just a stem with some long, dark leaves on them. And I'm also thinking about filling in the spaces here where I see spaces. Now I am going with a paler green, and I'm doing sort of a leaf that is really tiny, and they're growing from that stem side by side. So I'm just drawing in the stem or painting in the stem with the very tip of my brush, and just doing dots on either side of that stem, and just to give it another shape, a little more texture. But it's up to you. You can do whatever you want. It's your painting. I think it's a good idea to experiment with shapes and colors, and really experiment when you're doing your color swatches to get, some really nice colors that you love. Now I'm going ahead and putting the stems on these buds, putting a few little leaves around them. I'm going with the darker leaves again. I'm trying to balance it out. I'm trying to get same amount of dark on one side as the other side. I'm coming back in and just doing some little small leaves poking out here and there. Wherever I think there's an empty space that a nice leaf would look, would look good. And in the center of those little tiny round petaled flowers, I just put some new gamboge in that. Now that the flowers are dry, I'm coming back with another layer, and I'm just glazing in some shadows that gives it a little depth, a little bit more texture, a lot more contrast and interest. So I'm sort of just adding a deeper color in there in just certain spots. I'm not doing every little petal. I'm just putting in a few little darker marks here. Going to do the same thing with the Cosmo type flowers. I'm concentrating that darker orange toward the center, or you could even use that pink for the center of these darker orange flowers. Again, that just gives it more depth, more interest. I am coming in there with a little bit of a darker yellowish orange into those lacy flowers. They're still wet. They haven't dried yet. So once I touch it, that paint just disperses. It looks really nice. we're going to do the same thing with the leaves. We're going to come back in with a little bit darker greens and add a few more leaves here and there, a few stems wherever you want to. But yeah, I'm just coming in there into those leaves with a little darker shade of a green than the original green. Again, just to give it a little shadow, a little interest here and there. And it also helps with the contrast. It's really good when you can get some good contrast going along with those colors. Now I'm taking that purple and I went more toward the more saturated purple. And for those sprays, I'm just dotting little dots of purple in there right on top of that pale purple that has dried. Again, that gives it a little bit more of just a little more dimension. So I think we're done. Now if you want to add more flowers to this, you can add more leaves. It's up to you. I'm going to leave mine like that. So tomorrow, we are going to be doing something really simple. We are going to be doing figuring out our own composition, and this is what we're going to be doing tomorrow. We're going to be using watercolor, gouache, and a black fine liner. So this will be our project for tomorrow, and here are some of the other ones that I worked on. So tomorrow's going to be a fun, easy day. We are just going to probably focus on composition tomorrow and maybe a little bit of design, and that's it. So thanks for watching. We are through with day 1, and congratulations, you made it through. Don't forget to go over to Patreon and download your resource sheets.